Hello, it is time to bind a new journal, a new notebook. And what I have here is 100 GSM in weight, Croxley Heritage watermarked papers. Now first, before we start, I'd like to say a little bit about the terminology, because I was thinking I tend to bind my own journals and notebooks. And it's not rocket science. You just need to know what you do. I oftentimes usually like to do French knots. I find them very convenient. It doesn't take much time. But this time I'm going to be doing a little bit of a little bit more old school maybe. And when I mentioned about the terminology is I have, if I remember right, 25 signatures here. So every signature contains X amount of folios. A folio is a paper folded in two. Now, because I have a tendency, and especially now that it's summer, I collect flowers. I collect, mementos, feathers, everything that, life tosses my way. I tend to put them in my journals, in my commonplace books. So they always kind of fluff up, they fatten up nicely, and they become really nice and thick notebooks. I write a lot. I journal every single day. It's like that keeps me sane, basically. So I tend to bind books that are usually 300 to 400 pages per journal. Now, because this is a little bit thicker than I usually use, this is 100 GSM, the book is going to be quite thick. The thing is, the more you have, this only has 3 papers, 3 folios per signature. And that is because I would like the spine, so spine is where you bind these puppies together. I would like the spine to be a little bit thicker than, well, the other end of the folios. And that is because I want there to be space for the journal to grow. There needs to be, extra space there. That means I'm going to be binding this for, I don't know, eternity probably. So I'll probably pause the video at some point just because nobody has that amount of time. But I wanted to show how this can be done. It's not difficult. So the thing is, the more you have signatures and the less you have paper in the folio, the thicker the spine is going to be. So sorry, my camera is blowing up a little bit. And the more you have folios in a signature, the narrower the spine will be. Also, usually when you bind a book, any kind of a book, a notebook, anything, you press it and then you glue the spine. I don't tend to press my spines. I like them to appear organically as they are. So that too, as you see, I wonder if the camera shows. It does show. So if we were to angle it, so you see the spine is considerably much thicker, twice as thick as the other end of the notebook. So let's get going. So first what I do is I already have folded them, and when it comes to papers, every paper has a grain. So you can kind of feel around the paper. Hold on, I'll get a fresh sheet of the same paper. I will show that. So every paper has grain, and you can feel it around a paper. does it bend easier this way or that way? Now, this is hot pressed paper, so it's easier to tell the grain in a cold pressed paper. This is hot pressed, but it bends and folds easier that way, so we got lucky. But really, it doesn't matter. It matters not at all, really, because you know, when you use a notebook, the end result is going to be the same, whether you fold it against the grain or you know, accommodating the grain. So that is something you don't need to worry about when it comes to, you know, notebooks of this size and use. So then what we do is we have to, when we've folded our pages and made the signatures, we have to align them, because we need to mark the kind of a placements for our knots where we poke holes. This is quite nice and even. Clamps are always good, or a workbench. I always use this square end just to really make this nice. Like it needs to be kind of a tight, like a brick, and which it is now. It is now, sorry, can't speak. And the knots, because of the way I'm going to be binding this one, I don't need to be mindful if the numbers are even or uneven. It's you know, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to, I usually start about 1-ish centimeter from the ends. That is oh, I don't know, a little less than ½ an inch in inches. And this, I'd like to say, this is an art, it's not science. So I hope, by the way, that you don't feel too much clanging through the microphone from the ruler. So I mean, this is something, I'm binding this for myself. I'm buying this because I like to bind books. So I don't really worry too much about if every single, you know, signature is, you know, aligned by millimeter. I like to be a little bit fussy about it, but you know, in the end it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. And then you just kind of figure out where you want your knots to go. They don't have to be completely even along the way. They just have to be there. You can measure if you would like your knots to be completely, you know, evenly spaced. You can measure, and this is something you can spend as much time as you'd like with these things, but really you needn't. You can if you want to, but there's no need. You can just this is a project of, you know, of love, really. So next what you do is you need to poke holes to these places that you've marked. The light is coming from the window, so you can't quite see that very clearly, but there you see, there, you know, somewhat there. They are there. I'm happy with it. And very oftentimes a method of kind of a sawing through is used. So what you can do is you can clamp this tightly on your workbench, and then use a fine, like a Japanese saw or jewelry saw, something like that, and just saw through the signatures. But I don't know, there's something I like to poke my holes. I'm a poker, because I think that way the holes are just a little bit neater and tidier. And I do have an awl, but I don't have it right now with me because I'm having it sharpened and I haven't received it back yet. So what I'm going to be using is a darning needle, and there's nothing to it but to go to town. Oh, another one thing. I'll use my fountain pen here. It's a very good idea to mark the other end of your signatures, because if you mix up the thing, so what I'm doing here is, I'll show you because the camera is not working with me. So it's just a random kind of a line that you draw there, because if you misalign the signatures like so, your holes might not be completely aligned, and that's going to be a little bit wonky. So it's just a reminder for you. Now, how I go about marking the pages is I take the signature and I fold it the other way. You can also, you know, if you have extra cardboard, you can build yourself a kind of a template, or you can just, you know, poke holes like so if you have, again, extra cardboard, and you can just, you know, do a template. What I do, because I'm kind of a lazy when it comes to this, I just want to have fun, is I find the holes that I made, and whoopsie daisies, sorry about that, and I just poke them. I wonder if you can see. I just poke the holes where I drew the lines. So continue. So you see the holes out there, and then I just flip it back like so, and then I take another and carry on from there, inside out. You can see the I wonder if you can see, the camera is not that great, and the light, we have an evening here, so the light coming from the window is not that fantastic. It's good to use a completely different pen when you do the colored stripe, because otherwise you might mix up the pens. So now when you align the poked holes, I wonder if you can see, it really, this is blowing up so severely. So you just basically go through the pile and poke holes, and then we'll start stitching. So I've poked through all the holes now. Hold on. So sorry, I have the fan on. It's very hot here where I'm living, and uncharacteristically so. So we have to be ventilated properly. So now, as you can see, every hole is poked, and I want to show you as well the importance of the line that I nearly missed over here, because if you do, say you mix up and a signature is accidentally put the other way around, you see the little dot there, it turns out I have nearly aligned I actually quite well have aligned the holes. The thing is, it doesn't often, go so smoothly. Also, I'm a dressmaker by my trade, so I tend to have my way with measuring, but just so you make your life easier, I do recommend doing this. It's just, for security. Also, my apologies if my nails look a little bit gnarly. I did a hair oiling today, and the hair oil had some henna and bringaras in it, so that always leaves a little bit of a stain. Now, usually there is such a thing called as a bookbinding thread. You can also use any kind of a linen thread and then just wax it through with beeswax is traditionally used. What I have is remnants of these ancient embroidery threads, and I don't know if you do know, but I don't even know how old. This probably is from the time when I was a child, and I'm not young, so I don't know if you know about the old embroidery threads, but these things are pretty much indestructible. So I'm going to be using that because I like to use what I do have. But what you can use is a proper bookbinding thread or any kind of a linen thread, and then just wax it through. Or any kind of but it has to be really solid and good thread. But honestly, I've bound so many books over my lifetime, and I've used them, nearly all of them, and I am yet to find a thread that didn't hold. And there was a book I bound with a sewing thread, even no issues there. So it's kind of you use what you have, you use what you want to use, basically. So now what happens? I tend to pile up the papers, the signatures, on a kind of a farther up, and then always start from the bottom. So I always have, I also like, I don't know why, but I like the marking to be on the left hand side. That's just the way I do, so I always know where my different colored dot is. So you take your needle and your thread, and it doesn't matter if you start from the left hand side or from the right side. I tend to use, and that's just a what I'm used to, from the right side, and you just go in and out, in and out. And how long of a thread you use, it's up to you. Considering the amount of signatures I have there, I know I'm bound to have to rethread my needle and then do a knot in between, etc. So I don't sweat about it. But you can measure if you want to fuss with the obnoxiously long needle and thread. And what I do recommend to use is an upholstery needle that has a curvature in it. I just noticed there's some kind of a smudge. I don't know what that is here, but if you don't have that, you can use a tapestry needle. These have blunt ends, so you don't poke yourself. You don't have to. I usually use a sharp-ended darning needle just because I'm used to them, and I don't really prick myself with needles because I've used them so much over the years. So you just oh, so sorry. I have to be mindful now of this. situation I have going on here. You need to take the end. You just go in and out. When you get to the other end, you just take the route straight back. And this is where I like to make a knot. There. So this will be your first signature. What you have is a neat line of stitching. You take the next signature in order, just so that if your lines are a little bit wonky, you don't get, you know, any trouble from that. You go in and out from the next. Then what you do is you go in and you go right back up, but you do it from the other side of the knot. So what I do, oh come on, I wonder why the camera is so obstructive. Do I have to take it further? So what I do is I always go out from the furthest and then go back. It's almost like you trace back. This is why I like the kind of a pointier needle. You go in, but from the other side of a knot. And then back inside the signature. So you go to the middle of the signature and then go straight back outside, like so. And again, it's almost like a circular motion that you go through. And then right back up. So what you do is you go like so, go in, then come back up, go down, and then you go this, always to the direction where you are going. But this way you can kind of bind the signatures together from the places where they have knots. And then back in. I wonder if I could move the camera just slightly so it would be easier to show this, because this sewing the signatures together is a whole lot easier when you have a tabletop to use. And this is just these first two signatures are a little bit different than what is going to happen then afterwards, and then right back up from the other side. And don't pull the thread too much. It's not a struggle, it's not a fight. This is a labor of love and enjoyment. And if you pull these knots too tight, what will happen is the spine will have a C-like curvature. We don't want that. So you see the dots, the knots are starting to form there. Trying to adjust the camera so I don't drop it. And then the last one, you just go over like so, and you take another one. Now, if I had thicker signatures and more folios in a signature, I would leave a little bit extra room here in between the signatures, and I would actually make a knot to every, well, place where the knot already is, but just so that I would secure it even extra. But this time I don't have to. So what you do is you go in, and you go out. And now that you are here, you do exactly the same, but you go in between the signatures here. So you see, you are in between, and you return. It's almost like you take a step back. Like so. And now we go to the middle of this signature, so we return where we came from, and then out. And again, we go in between the signatures here, and out from the other side of the knot. I'm sorry, my hand is on the way. There's just no way to humanely try and wiggle the camera so that any of this would make any sense. I just hope that if you are interested in bookbinding, this would, I don't know, give some kind of a clarity. But obviously we have logistic issues here. I'm very aware of that. And again, out, and we go in between signatures. And out from the other side of the pre-existing knot, and then back inside the signature. That is the topmost. And out, and in to the in-between signatures, and out from the other side of a knot. If you hear something, that is our cat protesting of the lack of attention. And out, and inside from the next, from the between of the next dot. Oh, not outside, and then back into the signature. And out. Now when we get to the end here, where we have the other end of the thread where we started from, I just go inside and then out. So it's kind of like you lock you lock the needle there and the yarn there. If you want to, you can secure and make another knot. Especially with the waxed threads, they don't tend to unravel. I know this yarn doesn't unravel. This yarn doesn't do anything it's not meant to do. So I can just go ahead, because I don't like the kind of a floppy ends there. I'll just cut it off. And another signature. And this is how we carry on. I'll catch you up along the way. So, what do we do when we run out of thread? Well, don't panic. There's more thread in the world. Just take a new thread and weave it through. There actually is a protocol how to do this in bookbinding. I don't care about any of those protocols. I just like to do the way that I know that is strong and lasting, and the spine will be glued in the end regardless, so it doesn't really matter if the knot will be outside or inside. I just do it when I run out of thread. I just do a knot like so. Again, this is not rocket science. It's all quite doable. And then you pull it. You can add a dot of glue or a piece of tape if you want to. You don't have to. I tend to weave the ends, but now there's no tension there, but I usually kind of roll the ends on, either way, but it stays there and it's okay. You don't have to leave as much thread. I would do it neater, but I'm doing this book for me, so that will be a kind of a non-issue there. And then you just carry on sewing these signatures together. Now that there's a little bit of tension there, I wonder if I can just weave this now. These old embroidery threads, they just have a mind of their own, so I might as well let the thing have its way. So out, and again you go in from the signature below and pull the needle out from there. One thing that happens oftentimes if you don't wax the threads is that they can create a knot, and that is annoying. So waxing will prevent this. It is recommended, not it's not a necessity in my opinion. You'll just have to then, probably deal with knots. And when it comes to knots, I shouldn't be too worried about them to begin with. I mean, it depends completely on a kind of a thread you use, but I usually, of course, now I got a big one. Oh goody. But then you just untangle them. The last time I used beeswax and I waxed my thread, as I said, I usually use much thinner paper. My preferity is something like 70-60 GSM, honestly. So the beeswax actually bled through to the paper, and I know it doesn't usually do that when you're talking about thicker papers, but in that case it did. So I haven't waxed my threads ever since. I just use them like they are, and I kind of like the kind of a sheen there is to this embroidery thread. The last yarn I used to my old journal, not the one before, but the one before that. As I said, I write every day. It was olive green and it was quite beautiful, but this is like gold. This is a very sunny, beautiful color. I like this. And I don't know if you can see, but it kind of forms like a chain stitch when you look at it. And I just think it's quite pretty. When I bind these books, I usually lean them a little bit so I know to space the signatures evenly. So I don't arrange them in a 90-degree angle like earlier. I lean them, I push them a little bit forward so I know the stitching is even on every single stitch. And that gives it a beautiful kind of as I mentioned, space to grow and live. And that is because I like to shove things in my, I'm not much of a scrapbooker. It's not that. It's just I like my dried flowers. I go for walks often. I go swimming nearly every morning. And when I come from swimming, I take a little walk in the woods. We have very beautiful nature trail close by the river. I take a stroll down there and I collect these beautiful flowers that grow there in abundance. I never take from nature's scarcity. I always take from nature's abundance. So I just put the flowers in between the pages of my journal. And when I come home, I add a little droplets of glue and I stick them there, especially, in between commonplace books. Some flowers, like today I collected Lily of the Valley, and they don't bloom much, it's a very short kind of a period when the lily of the valley is in bloom. So I collected some today and pressed them in between my commonplace book and my now journal. So these are the things that make the bulk in my notebooks, and I just want to make sure that there is space. And as I mentioned before, that if you bind the spine too tightly, what will happen is that the spine makes a curvature, kind of like a C, cinches it together, and it's not very nice to use that kind of a notebook, and it's just unsightly. So if you want to tighten the knots afterwards, after you have bound the book, and if you think the book is too loosely bound, you really can't either loosen or tighten the knots either. But what you can do is, as I mentioned, you can press the spine. You can just, art books are great. They are always very heavy. You can just press the pages or use clamps or, whatever you have. and then just glue the spine, and the spine will stay like that. But as I mentioned, I don't tend to press these spines, not for myself, because I know how I use them, and I know that there'll be flowers. When it's summertime, there will be flowers. And sunflowers, as I mentioned, the lily of the valley, and meadowsweet as well. That has a very beautiful, kind of a very pungent, fragrant smell to it. But that only, that is in bloom only later in the summer. So the scent of a flower remains in the notebook, and that is quite beautiful. And even though I was just thinking about it today, I walked from the beach and I have my late father's old linen towel with me, and I had my wet swimsuit in the basket right next to my notebook. I'm not squeamish about these things. I think a notebook is something you live with. You experience life with it. My journal is my best friend. I write every day and I talk to my journal as one would talk to one's confidant, because that is exactly what it is. Where I go, it goes. Even if I go to a grocery store around the corner, my journal is with me, because you never know. Maybe a beautiful leaf or a beautiful flower is found along the way. You just never know. I make my own planner. I use a system I haven't seen anywhere, and it's on a ring bound planner, on an A5 sized 6-ringed binder. It's a leather binder from a Finnish company called Ajasto. It's the kind of there's a little bit of, maybe I can make another note. Much like I have another binder, an old Balmoral from Filofax as well. The ring spacing is equal with the both of the companies, so I use my planner and my notes go in there. But for journaling and a commonplace book, I use my journal. I have a full shelf full of commonplace books. I've used them in different formats. Some of them are in ring-bound planners, and some are binders, not planners anymore, but binders. I find them very versatile. Ring-bound binders. Many of my commonplace books are in different sized traveler's notebooks. I make them myself. I have a few from the traveler's company that used to be Midori. But usually I make my own. I like to make my own things. Even now that I'm binding this, I'm already, it's kind of like if you were to create a garment. I always start to imagine, where would I wear it? What would I wear it with? How would I feel wearing it? It's the same that I think about this notebook. I'm going to take you with me everywhere I go. And I don't mind if they get wet. I don't mind if it rains. Ink will bleed. I usually use a fountain pen, you know. This is my absolute favorite. Twisby Diamond 580. Absolutely beautiful. The ink just flows freely and lusciously. And I don't know, the fountain pen, it has seen all kinds of places and situations, and I put it in between the pages of my notebook. I'm not very careful with my things. They are here to live with me. I'm not here to live for them. So I know this journal will get wet, probably, in the basket. I could take a plastic bag with me. I don't like plastic. I just do not like plastic. So I just roll my swimsuit inside of the towel, and then I go for a walk. And then there are benches along the way. I might sit and write a little bit, but if today was any indication of the summer we are about to have, I'm not going to be sitting much along the way, because the mosquitoes were on my case immediately as I started to walk. But you know, there are open spaces that one can sit in. And especially I like to, in the morning, when I come from swimming and my walk, it's still very early. And it's very quiet. I usually see many people when I'm out and about walking. There's a one old gentleman. He seems to be up very early hours. I mean, I'm often out and about before 6. By 5:30 I'm already out the way, probably in the lake already, I don't know, very early anyways. But I don't see that many people when I'm out and about, and I like it that way. Then I come home and it's still quiet, and I make myself some breakfast and a cup of tea, peppermint tea, usually in the morning. And I just sit down and start to write about my thoughts. And on my planner, I plan my day. I've already pre-planned my week, but there's always the day to plan, and that's my alone time in the morning. And then during the daytime, I used to be very poor about when it came to taking your own time to journal. Journaling was something I did on a stolen moment. Wherever I had a time, here and there, I did it then. But these days, I've started to prioritize the time for journaling. Not every day. I don't have the opportunity to every day to prioritize journaling and take some time for it. But oftentimes when I come back home in the afternoon, I take the time to just sit down, and then I start to write. It's like thinking out loud with words. It's very, I find, relaxing. And oftentimes when you feel conflicted about also very many things, because This well seems to be going to the direction of extremities. After you've written things down, it's almost like you get it all out of your system and you can move on. And what I've done with difficult things, with hard things, is I write about them first, but then I think about what good could be the outcome of this. Is there anything good in that situation? There aren't that many situations in life where there isn't anything good in them. And then I just sit down and start to think out loud with words, pen to paper. And I start to think, what good could be the outcome of this? I faced a lot of difficulties in this lifetime, and I managed to pull to the other side every single time. Wouldn't this moment, wouldn't this case, wouldn't this whatever thing, why would it be? Is there something that is so special that I couldn't pull, through this thing? So, writing about these things kind of gives everything a very healthy perspective. And I don't know, maybe for an introvert, a book or notebook, a journal can, and I'll be happy to admit this immediately. It also is a place to kind of escape to. Oftentimes when I'm in cafeteria, I start to draw people and I write about what do I see, what do I experience. And the thing is, what I found is I haven't noticed other people do that. I think I'll forever remember last winter there was one man. He had a journal, and I'm guessing, this is a guesstimation, I'm guessing it was a extra large moleskine. Or then it might have been the B+5 from Victoria's journals, based on the color of the paper and the shape and size of it. That's how obsessed I've been in notebooks through all my life. And he was writing. He stood there in his solitude and he wrote for hours. And it really caught my eye because that doesn't usually happen. It's not a reoccurrence that you see oftentimes. And then I've needed to think, have I seen anything like that before or afterwards? Earlier this spring, actually, there was another man. He has it is a size and a shape of a moleskine, large. All Victoria's journals that has, the same size and shape and look, just, with better paper. Victoria's journals, they carry a notebook that has 70 GSM paper, and it takes fountain pens, and it doesn't bleed through. I love that paper, and it's this beautiful creamy color, much better than the paper the moleskine has. And the price point is. I think that notebooks, what, it's something like €7, something less than €8, whereas the same size of Moleskine is, I don't know, is it 27 or €30? Doesn't seem reasonable for a, you know, notebook that leaves so much to be desired. Let's put it this way. I used to love Moleskine, but then they lowered the quality of the paper. But I have to say, the quality of Victoria's Journal's paper was better as well. It's understandable that companies want to make profits, but you know, just have to wonder that what about the integrity of a company along the way? But still, you know, no matter what, the Victoria's Journal's paper so far has taken fountain pen ink beautifully. Still, it's just, it isn't as smooth and lovely as it was before, unfortunately. Okay, I'm running quite low on yarn. I guess I'll bind the rest of the signatures and we'll get back then. So the last signature, and I have just enough of the binding thread left. And what you just, you know, do in the end is you just tie a knot at the end, and that's it. I'll make another one just for good measure, and that's it. So then, now what happens? Gather everything together. Look at the end result. Looks like that. You can check if you, as you see, the spine is still a little bit wibbly wobbly. That is because there's really no structure there. So now what happens is glue is what happens. This actually is a good time if you were inclined to add some bookmarks in. I don't intend to put any kind of a cover on this. I may do something to the front covers. I'm going to leave the spine as is. I think it's quite pretty. But I'm going to find some bookmark ribbons now and carry on in a bit. So what do is I take two lengths, measuring from one end to the other, and then some. Decide which, I'll just decide. So this would be the top part. So hold on, I'll just wiggle it in there. Can't see really what I'm doing, can you? No, I'll just put it in the very middle. What you can do is just count how many signatures you have and then thread this through. I can't be bothered, I just shove it in there. Hope for the best, wish it well on the way. Because then what you're going to do is you'll be gluing in a short while. If I were to put any kind of a cover on this, I'd be sewing the end tapes to either side. You know the stripy, pretty little bumps, or you can, just use fabric and put a cord inside if you want to take the easy way out. It doesn't matter. It kind of finishes the edge, and then do the covers. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to leave it as is, kind of a half done. I like the organic feel of it. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing, or not going to be doing actually, for that matter. Try to level it up as much as you can. There. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. And some glue. I've got some pretty good. This is basically what you need, is a PVA glue. This is fairly good. It's very elastic. It's actually wood glue that I'm using, and this is what the woodworkers use. So if it's good enough for them, I reckon it's good enough for me. Now here, and this moment, it would be good if you had a clamp or someone who could, work as a clamp, because if you just leave the spine open like this, what happens is you get glue inside the signatures, in between the signatures, and that tends to glue them too much together. So give me a moment to see what I can figure out. So what I'll do is I'll just, squish the spine with my hands. I'm sorry, this will blow up so much. I wonder if I would put the blinds on the window. Just another moment, please. I don't know if that helps, but we'll see about that. So what I'll do is I'll squish the spine and apply the glue little by little. I don't want to put too much. You can always put another layer and then another and another and another. But I tend to start with the knots, because they are the ones that need to be glued first and the best, just to reinforce them. I'll have to work on semi-challenging angles, considering I have the tripod standing there. I'm trying not to boink on that too much. Now, how I'm binding the books, I'd like to remind everyone that I'm not a professional book binder. I'm not a book binder to begin with. I just do this because I enjoy it. It's just one of the things I like to do. So my advice is not professional advice. It is just how I like to do things. I've bound many books before, and I have my own way of doing them, and it may not be a right way to go, considering thinking of a professional proper book binding. This is how I do this. When the glue hardens, it will become transparent. I just hope the beautiful, very sunny golden color translates even when the glue is dried up. And you can always return and glue a little bit more. Stay there. And as I mentioned, if that is your jam, you can press this under, excuse me, underneath heavy books or under a clamp, under whatever you have. I will just leave it be. I'm happy with the way the spine is right now. I just want to make sure that it is even from everywhere, and I'll go and wash the brush immediately before it hardens. So the spine is not completely dried up yet. It mostly is. I mean, it's good to touch, but it's not completely dried. I'm going to proceed anyways because it's quite late in the evening here already, and I need to get to bed. So what I decided to do, what I oftentimes do, is I take this is 25 GSM strength mulberry paper. You can have packaging tape even. I often use brown packaging tape, paper tape. Or nothing. You can add another and then another layer of glue if you want to. But I like to use some kind of a reinforcement when I'm using a so-called naked book. This is how I call them, because you know they don't have any covers. These books are the sphinx of book world. They don't have the fur. So I take this mulberry paper. I've even used, you know, scrap fabrics along the spine just to reinforce it. But as I said, it doesn't necessarily need anything. But if you want, I want to have something, because this has 300 pages, and I take my book everywhere with me. It's on my basket. It's on my tote. It's on my briefcase. Wherever I go, I take it with me. It's in a cafe. It's over there deep in the forest. It's by the lake. It's getting tossed about and probably sat on more than one occasion. So I want some reinforcement. So I take this mulberry paper. It's very thin, but it's kind of a fibrous. I tried once parchment paper, and the idea of it was very appealing to me. Practicality of it left much to be desired. It practically broke. It became very kind of a dried, crackling thing. It didn't help anything. So it was useless. It was useless. But this has worked marvelous. I have tried rice paper, but in my own opinion, the mulberry paper is better. I don't know where mulberry paper wouldn't be good at. So I'm going to use that. Oftentimes I just paste this with glue, stick it on the table like so, and then just place the book right in the very middle of it. And then just, you know, glue the sides, and then go with a bone folder and go to the crevices. But now that I'm here in this table settee, I'm going to glue the spine at the mulberry paper, which is probably better by the protocol that I can nothing of. But anyways, and then do the sides. I think I'll do that, and then I'll leave the pretty little new friend to dry until tomorrow. So once more, we'll take a little bit of the glue and start gluing. If you used some kind of a saw, or I've used a saw before. I've used a steak knife. I've used a you know, the kind of a bread slicing knife as well, because it has serrated edges. In that case, before applying any kind of a glue, it's a very good idea to take the bone folder. I wonder if I can balance. I can. To take the bone folder and kind of push the holes closed by the stitching, and you can even straighten the stitching, because this is handiwork. You can straighten the stitching if you're very fussy about it. I really don't care. But you can kind of make them very straight with these, because you know the glue is water soluble before it hardens, so you can do your magic with the bone folder. This is really plastic. This is not bone. It's just called a bone folder. It's not very costly. You can find it. I found mine in a bookshop, in a very common normal bookshop. I don't think they are very hard to find. I don't know though. I've had just the one, and I've used it, I don't know, forever and a day, it feels like. So yeah. When I do the whole spine gluing thing, I tend to start with a little bit less glue and then add on, depending on what kind of a binding. Is there going to be a cover, or is there not going to be a cover? But I don't just ram the glue into the, because you know it tends to bleed between the signatures, and that's just not very attractive, that you need to then muscle the pages open in between the signatures. And I don't like the spine to be too hard either. I like the spine to be accommodating to usage. I like the spine to open fully. I don't want to have to negotiate with anything. I don't like those kinds of very tight bindings where you have to, it's almost like, no, life is just too short. And now I'm just eyeballing, oh no, I'm not eyeballing anything, I'm just ramming it right in the smack middle of it, just like I usually do. There. Then I take the bone folder. I start at the middle-ish and go to the edges. The mulberry paper is pretty malleable, especially at this time when it's wet. And you will see this line here. I don't mind if you do. What you can do is use a friction pen and then heat it up with a blow dryer, because friction pen, it's the marking will go away when used heat on it, and if you need the marking to come back, just shove the thing in a freezer. It comes back if it's cold. Now that this is done, I mean, mulberry paper is just a wonderful resource. And you see the knots, the beautiful lines of knots just translate beautifully from underneath the mulberry paper. This is a point I tend to like to go back and tighten the knots, really tighten the knots. and it makes for attractive spine, especially if you prefer a kind of an undone book. I think, you know, in a notebook, on a journal, this to me is very appealing. This is not any kind of a, you don't take this notebook on a boardroom, on a kind of a meeting with the big head honchos or anything. This is your journal. This will become part of your history, part of your story. Make it your own. Make it look like you. Like you. What is your story? What are the area of your interests? Go there. And then, depending on the weight of your paper, just oh, it doesn't matter really. The thing is, the mulberry silk paper is very thin and it tends to stretch, so I'm making a exception. Usually what you would do is you would apply glue to the mulberry paper here, but the thing is, it's just so thin and so stretchy, so I'm going to do this. Stretched a little bit there. It's okay. You'll be fine. You're already very beautiful. And then the other side. The corners, I always like to glue the corners like so. And then just, you know, go to town. It's a little fiber coming out. I understand the angle here leaves much to be desired, but we'll just have to work with what we have. And I'm just going to leave this to dry here. It'll be so pretty. Now what is left is the edges, but that I think will be another video. Thank you for watching if you made it this far. I wish you a beautiful day ahead. Happy bindings.